Hello there friends, it's Ashley here from the Loopy Lamb and theloopylamb.com, and thanks so much for stopping by the channel. It is week 23 of the 2023 Amigurumi Advent Calendar Crochet Along, and this week we're continuing on with a part of the project that we started 2 weeks ago. We are working on our firefighter costumes for our dolls. So if you missed last week, we did the helmet, and this week we have two different videos and two different patterns. We're going to be working on the jacket and the pants. In this video, we're going to be working on the jacket, and when you're finished with that, make sure that you check out the other video, which is week 24, showing you how to make the pants that go with our firefighter costume. So let's hop on into what materials we'll need to follow along with today's tutorial. To follow along with today's tutorial, making a firefighter jacket for our Advent Adam dolls, you're going to need the following materials. I'm using a 3.5mm or E crochet hook from Furls Crochet, and if you've been using a different hook size in order to match the gauge given in the pattern, I recommend using that hook size instead of the 3.5mm. If you're looking for the gauge information for this pattern, you can find it in the written version of this pattern over on my blog, theloopylamb.com, and you can find a link to that in the description box below for you. As for yarn, you're going to need yarn in 3 different colors. You'll need a worsted weight yarn, and this is Bravo worsted weight yarn from We Crochet. These are 100 gram balls, and they have 218 yards per ball. Now you're going to need the main color, and for me, I'm using almond today. You can see on my sample here that the main color was black, but since we're not going to see a whole lot if I crochet in black, I've switched my main color to the almond. Now, we are also going to need the 2 different colors for our stripes. I'm using Canary Yellow and Dove Heather for my stripes. You'll also need a stitch marker. You could use 2 if you'd like, but I'll cover that later. These are optional supports when crocheting the firefighter's jacket. You're going to need a pair of scissors, a sewing needle, and some sewing thread in a color that works with the main color of your jacket. You'll need a yarn needle and 4 of these 9mm buttons to make your jacket. So let me clear off my workspace here and we'll jump on in to creating our very own firefighter jacket for our Advent Adam dolls. All right, to start our firefighter jacket for our doll, we are going to need to create a slip knot. To do that, we're going to take the tail end of our yarn in our main color, and for me, that is the color almond. If you're wanting to make your uniform like the one in the sample, then you'd be using the color black here. So I'm laying the tail end of my main colored yarn across my palm, and I'm going to pin it down with my thumb, and then I'm going to wrap the yarn around the back of my fingers and bring it back to the front. Then I'm going to cross it over itself to create this X here. Then I'm going to flip my hand over, and holding on to the yarn, I'm going to bring the yarn with me. Now I'm going to pin the yarn between my middle and ring fingers to hold it secure for this next step. Now you can do this next step with your fingers or your crochet hook, but just to make it a little easier for you to see what I'm doing, I'm going to use my crochet hook. So we're going to take the hook and we're going to place it under the first strand and over the second. Then we're going to drag the second strand under the first, and then while we're pulling with our crochet hook, we're going to gently remove our fingers from the yarn. Now pull up with your hook while you're still holding on to those 2 tail ends of your yarn, and pull up to tighten that knot up. And now you're going to drop the tail and grab the working end of the yarn. The working end of the yarn is the yarn that is still attached to the ball of yarn that you're going to be using to create your stitches. So you're going to grab that end of the yarn and give that a tug to bring your slip knot right up to the crochet hook, and make sure it's not too tight. If you're not sure if it's too tight or not, make sure that you can do this, move your slip knot back and forth to make sure you've got some movement there in order to start crocheting. And now we're ready to start our foundation chain. To make our jacket, we're starting from the top down, and we're going to create a chain of 30 in our main color here. So we're going to yarn over and pull through the loop. That is our first chain. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through this chain, the loop on our hook again, to create our second chain. And if you turn your piece, you can see you've got these little V's that we're creating. So now we're going to continue to do this yarn over and pull through the loop until we have 30 chains. So right now we're at 3 and we're going to yarn over and pull through. There's 4. So if you'd like to pause your video and continue to yarn over and pull through the loop until you've got 30 chains, I'll meet you back here in just a moment to show you how we're starting row 1. All right, so I'm back and I have my 30 chains. But before we get into round 1, I just want to show you how to count the chains if you're not familiar with that. So counting our chains, we want to make sure that the chain is facing us where we can see these V's here. If you look at the piece, you'll see 2 strands, one furthest from you, one closest, and they kind of create a V shape. Now counting from your slip knot over towards your hook, you would just count each one of those V's over towards your hook. Now you would stop counting at this V here. We never count the yarn on our hook as a chain or in any of those kind of stitch counts that we'll do throughout the piece. So now we're ready to start with row 1. So for row 1, we're going to place a single crochet in the 7th chain from the hook. So again, we never count the yarn on our hook as a chain. We're going to start counting in this first chain here. So we're going to count over 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now I'm going to place my finger right next to that 7th chain so I know where I'm going to be working my stitch. And now I'm going to work a single crochet. So I'm going to insert my hook through the center of the V, and then I'm going to yarn over and pull up a loop. There should be 2 loops on your hook. Then you're going to yarn over again and pull through both loops on your hook. And that is your first single crochet completed. And now you should have a little loop here that we from those chains that we skipped, and that will be our first buttonhole on our firefighter's jacket. And now we're going to work 1 single crochet into each remaining chain across. So working into that next chain through the center of the V, yarn over and pull up a loop. You should have 2 loops on your hook. Then you're going to yarn over and pull through both loops on your hook to complete your next stitch. And now I'll show you that again. Into the next chain, yarn over, 2 loops on our hook, then yarn over and pull through both loops. And that is our 3rd single crochet completed. So if you'd like to pause your video and work 1 single crochet into each chain across, I'll meet you back here at the end of the row to show you how we're moving into row 2. At the end of this row, you should have 24 stitches plus your chain 6 button loop. So I'll meet you back here in just a moment. All right, so we're at the end of the row and your piece should look like this so far, and my finger and thumb here are over our chain loop. Now when you're counting your stitches, you're going to not count those chain 6 loops that we did there, or we're just going to be counting our stitches. And to do that, you turn your piece so you can see those V's just like our chain, and you're going to count each one of the V's across. And again, you want to make sure that you're not counting that chain space that we created. So you want to make sure that you're counting from this first V. And if it's helpful, you can place a stitch marker in that stitch, or you can just cover up the chains with your hand and count your stitches from your chain space over to your last stitch. And again, you should have 24 stitches at the end of this row. Now, row 1 is the right side of our fabric, and moving into row 2, it's going to be the wrong side of our fabric. If you find it helpful, you can use a stitch marker to mark the right side of the fabric, so that way when we get to the point where you need to recognize that side of the fabric, you'll be able to identify it as the side with the stitch marker. Now moving into row 2, we're going to yarn over and chain up 1. Now we're going to turn our work and we're ready to begin our stitches. Now we have a repeat that we need to do for this piece, and if you have the written pattern open adjacent to this, you can see that the instructions say to single crochet 3 followed by single crochet increase, and that we're going to do that 6 times. So That means we're going to place 1 single crochet into each of the 3 stitches followed by an increase. And so we'll do that now. So working under both loops of the first stitch, we're going to single crochet. And then we're going to do that into the next 2 stitches as well. So 1 single crochet into that first stitch, 1 single crochet into the next. So we have 3 single crochets. And now working into the next stitch, we're going to do our single crochet increase, and that means we're going to work 2 single crochets into the same stitch. So into that next stitch, single crochet once, back into the same stitch, and single crochet a second time. Now that is our first completed repeat. Again, our repeat is 3 single crochets followed by a single crochet increase. So we'll do that again. We're going to work 1 single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. So there's 1, 2, and 3. And then we're going to do a single crochet increase into the next stitch. And again, when we're doing a single crochet increase, that's 2 single crochets worked into the same stitch. So there's the first half of our increase, back into the same stitch, and here is the second half of our increase. And that is our second completed repeat. So we need to do this 4 more times. So if you'd like to pause your video and work 3 single crochets followed by a single crochet increase, I'll meet you back here at the end of the round to talk to you about stitch counts and how we're moving into the next row. All right, so I'm back and I'm at the end of row 2, and at the end of row 2 you should have 30 stitches. Now I wanted to also mention that your stitches should stop in the last single crochet of the previous row. You should not be working into that chain space that we created. This is a buttonhole and we're just going to leave it as is. Okay, so now we're ready to move into row 3. To do that, we're going to yarn over and chain up 1 and turn our work. And now we have another repeat for row 3 that we have to do. But first we're going to start with 1 single crochet into each of the first 2 stitches. So 1 single crochet into the first stitch, 1 single crochet into the next. And then we're going to do a single crochet increase into the next stitch. And again, that's those 2 single crochets worked into the same stitch. And now we're going to learn our repeat. So our repeat for this row is 4 single crochets followed by a single crochet increase, and we need to do that 5 times. So we'll do that now. So 1 single crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. So here's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now we've got our 4 single crochets. We're going to work a single crochet increase into the next stitch. And again, that's 2 single crochets worked into the same stitch. Okay, and that's our first repeat. So now we need to do this 4 more times. So showing you the full repeat again, 1 single crochet into each of the first 4 stitches. So here's 1, 2, 3, and 4, followed by a single crochet increase into the next. Okay, so that's our second repeat. If you'd like to pause your video and do 3 more repeats of 4 single crochets followed by a single crochet increase, there should be 2 stitches left to be worked at the end of the row, and I'll show you how to do that when I come back in just a moment. All right, so I'm back. I just finished my 5th repeat of the 4 single crochets followed by an increase, and we have 2 stitches left to be worked in this row. So now we're just going to work 1 single crochet into each of those last 2 stitches. So here's 1, and here is 2. Now, at the end of row 3, you should have 36 stitches across your row. And now we're ready to move into row 4. So we're going to yarn over and chain up 1 and turn our work. So for row 4, we have another repeat we need to do. We're going to do 5 single crochets followed by a single crochet increase, and we're going to do that 6 times. So I'll show you how to do that now. Working into the first stitch, we're going to single crochet. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There's 5 single crochets, and then we're going to do a single crochet increase into the next stitch. And that is our first completed repeat. And we're going to do that again. 1 single crochet into each of the next 5 stitches. That's 1, 3, and 5. And now that we have our 5 single crochets, we're going to do a single crochet increase into the next stitch. And that's our next repeat completed. So if you'd like to pause your video and do 4 more repeats of 5 single crochets, followed by a single crochet increase, I'll meet you back here at the end of the row where you should have 42 stitches, and then we'll show you how to move into row 5. All right, so we're at the end of row 4 and we're moving into row 5. In row 5, we're going to be creating the armholes for our jacket. So to start, we're going to yarn over and chain up 1. Then we're going to turn our work, and we're going to work 1 single crochet into each of the first 5 stitches. So here's our first single crochet in that first stitch. There's 3. All right, now that we have our first 5 single crochets, we're going to do a chain of 8. So we're going to yarn over and pull through the loop. There's 1. Yarn over and pull through the loop. There's 2. And we're going to continue to do this yarn over and pull through the loop until we have 8 chains. So now that we have 8 chains, we're going to skip 11 stitches in our piece. So we start counting our stitches from the first unworked stitch in this row, and we're going to count over 11. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So because I want to skip 11 stitches, I'm going to place my finger next to the 12th stitch because that's where we're going to work our next single crochet. So working into the 12th stitch, I'm going to work 1 single crochet into that stitch. And so what you can see, what we've done here is we've created an opening that will eventually become our armholes. And we'll attach our sleeves to those armholes. So now that we've done 1 single crochet, we're going to work 1 single crochet into each of the next 9 stitches. There's 3. And 6. All right, so now that we've done 9 more single crochets, we have to create our second armhole, and we want our armholes to be even, so we're going to be creating another chain 8. So we're going to yarn over and pull up a loop. There's 1. Yarn over and pull through the loop. There's 2. And we're just going to continue this yarn over and pull through until we have 8 chains. So now that I have 8 chains, I'm going to skip 11 stitches in my piece. So again, we start skipping stitches counting from the first unworked stitch in your piece, and we're counting over 11. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Now, because I want to skip 11, I'm going to place my finger next to the 12th stitch, and per the instructions, we're going to work 1 single crochet into that 12th stitch. And now we're going to work 1 single crochet into each of the remaining 4 stitches. Right, and so this is what your piece should look like. You should have these 2 chain spaces here that will become our armholes. You should have 20 stitches plus your 2 chain 8 spaces for armholes. And now we're ready to move into row 6. For row 6, we're going to yarn over and chain up 1 and turn our work. So we're going to work 1 single crochet into each stitch and chain across. So we're going to start by working 1 single crochet into each of these first 5 stitches. So now that we are at the chain, you're going to kind of want to turn the chain because right now the back of the chain is facing me and I can see these little bumps. What I want to see is the V's of the chain. So I'm going to turn it over so I can see those V's, and then I'm going to insert my stitch into the first chain and single crochet. Okay, and then we're just going to work 1 single crochet into each of those chains across. So now that you've worked 1 single crochet into each stitch across, you're just going to continue to work 1 single crochet into each remaining stitch and chain. Now, if you'd like to pause your video and meet me back here before you do your last stitch of the row, because the last stitch of the row is going to be done slightly differently because we are ready to change colors. So if you'd like to pause your video and work 1 single crochet into each of the stitches remaining and the chains remaining, I'll meet you back here in just a moment. All right, so I'm back and I'm at my last stitch of row 6. Now, because we're changing colors in row 7, we need to do something different with our last stitch of row 6 in order to change our colors. So what we're going to do is we're going to start a single crochet as we normally would into the last stitch. So inserting our hook, yarn over and pull up a loop. Now what you're going to do is you're going to drop your old color and bring in the new color. We're going to be switching to the yellow color. I'm using canary yellow, and we're just going to lay that new color over the hook. Right? Leave a tail of at least 4 to 6 inches there because you're going to need to weave that in later. So now that we've got our new yarn on our hook like this, this is our last yarn over of the stitch. We're going to use our hook to pull that yellow through both loops on our hook, and that completes our last single crochet. Now at the end of row 6, you should have 36 single crochet stitches. And now we're ready to move into row 7. To start row 7, we're going to do a chain of 6. So we're going to yarn over and pull through the loop on our hook to create 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 chains. Now we're going to turn our work and we're ready to continue with row 7. So for row 7, we're going to skip these 6 chains that we worked, and we're going to start working directly into that last single crochet of the previous stitch, or previous row. And we have a repeat that we need to follow for this row as well. The repeat for this pattern, or for this row, is 5 single crochets followed by a single crochet increase. So we've done that before, but I'll show you it again. Working into that first single crochet, again, we're skipping those chains. We're going to single crochet into that first single crochet. So there's 1, and then we're going to place 1 single crochet into each of the next 5 stitches, or goodness, 4 stitches. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And now we're going to work a single crochet increase into the next stitch. And that's our first completed repeat for the row. And now I've had forgotten, but if you don't want to leave your yarn attached, you can cut your old color, the main color here, and leave a tail of about 4 to 6 inches that you can weave in later. I apologize for forgetting to mention that earlier, but as a designer, I tend to weave my ends in out the very end and leave the yarn tails attached as long as possible. So what we're going to do now is we're going to continue with our repeat. We've done it once already and we need to do it 5 more times. So I'll show you how to do this again. We're doing 1 single crochet into each of the next 5 stitches. So here's 1, 3, and 5. And then we're going to do a single crochet increase into the next stitch. And that's our second pattern repeat completed. So if you'd like to pause your video and do 4 more repeats of 5 single crochets followed by a single crochet increase, at the end of this row you should have 42 stitches plus your chain 6 buttonhole loop that we created at the beginning. So I'll meet you back here in just a few moments at the end of the row. So I'm back, I'm at the end of the row, and there's 1 stitch left to be worked, and that's going to be my last single crochet increase. But we need to change colors moving into row 9. So what we're going to do is, row 8, we're going to single crochet first into that stitch as our first part of our single crochet increase, and then we're going to start our next single crochet with this color, and then we're changing colors. So we're going to drop the yellow and bring in our next color, which for me is this light gray color called Dove Heather. So what you're going to do is you're going to, again, leave a yarn tail of a few inches that you can weave in later, and then lay the yarn over your hook. Then you're going to use your hook to pull that new color through both loops of the old color to finish your stitch. Now at the end of row 7 there, you should have 42 stitches. Now moving into row 8, we're going to yarn over and chain up 1 and turn our work. Now you can cut your yellow and leave a tail of about, again, 4 to 6 inches for weaving in. We'll need the yellow in a moment, but we are done using it for now. So for row 8, we have a simple row. We're just going to work 1 single crochet into each stitch across. So we're old hats at single crochet by now, so we're just working 1 single crochet into that first stitch and each of the remaining stitches across. When you get to the end of the row where you find your chain space, do not work into the chain space, please. That is our buttonhole, and we're not going to be working into that. At the end of this row, you should still have 42 stitches. Meet me back here when you have 1 stitch left to work in the row, because we're going to change colors moving into row 9. So I'll meet you back here in just a moment. Alright, so I'm back. I'm at the end of row 8 and I have 1 stitch left to be worked, but again we're changing colors. So we're going to start our single crochet in that last stitch with our current color. Now that we have 2 loops on our hook, we're going to drop the old color and we're switching to yellow again. So again, we're going to leave a tail that you can weave in it later before you put your yarn onto your hook. Yarn over hook with the new color and then pull the new color through both loops of the old color to complete your stitch. And now we're ready to move into row 9. We're going to yarn over and chain up 1 and turn our work. Now you can cut your gray yarn. You will be done with the gray for some time. And so we're going to cut a tail of about 4 to 6 inches to weave in later. And now we're going to work 1 single crochet into each stitch across for row 9. So if you'd like to pause your video and work 1 single crochet into each stitch across, meet me back here when you have 1 stitch left to be worked in the round, because we'll be changing colors again at the end of the round to move into round 10. So I'll meet you back here in just one moment. So we're at the end of row 9 here, and we've got this last stitch here that needs to be worked, and we're changing colors to our main color at the end of the row here. So we're going to start our last single crochet with our old color, drop the old color, bring in your new color, which for me is the almond, which is my main color, and then I'm draping that over the hook and then pulling that through both loops on my hook to complete my last stitch. So then we're going to chain up 1 and turn our work. You can cut your yellow yarn now, again leaving a tail of about 4 to 6 inches for you to weave in later, and you can set that aside for now. So for rows 10 through 12, we're doing the same thing for all of those rows. We're just going to work 1 single crochet into each stitch across using our main color. So if you'd like to pause your video and do rows 10, 11, and 12, working 1 single crochet into each stitch across and then chaining up 1 and turning your work at the end of each row. I'll meet you back here at the end of row 12 to show you how we're moving into row 13. Alright, so I'm back and I just finished my last stitch of row 12 and we're ready to move into row 13. To start row 13, we need to create another buttonhole. So we're going to do that by doing a chain of 6. So we're going to yarn over and pull through the loop. We're going to do this until we have 6 chains. So there's 1, 3, and 6. Now that I have 6 chains, I'm going to turn my work. And for row 13, we're going to skip those first 6 chains and place our first single crochet into the last single crochet of the previous row. And again, because we've skipped those chains, we've created another buttonhole. For the remainder of the row, we're just going to work 1 single crochet into each stitch across. Now for row 14, you're also going to be working 1 single crochet into each stitch across. So if you'd like to pause your video and meet me back here when there's 1 stitch left to be worked in the row 14, I'll show you how we're changing colors moving into row 15. So I'll meet you back here in just a moment. Alright, so I'm back and I just finished row 14, well almost. I have 1 stitch left to be worked because we are changing colors as we move into row 15. So we're going to start our last single crochet with our old color. Dropping the old color, we're going to bring in our new color, which will be the yellow again. Drape it over our hook, and then we're going to pull that loop through both loops on our hook to finish our stitch. Then we're going to chain up 1 and turn our work. For row 15, we're just going to work 1 single crochet into each stitch across. You can cut your old color, leaving a tail for you to weave in later, and then work 1 single crochet into each stitch across. Make sure you come back to me here when you've got 1 stitch left to be worked at the end of the row, because we're going to be changing colors moving into row 16. So I'll meet you back here in just a moment. Alright, so we're at the end of row 15. We have 1 stitch left to be worked, and so we're going to start our last single crochet with our current color, drop the current color, and then we're going to change to our gray. And then we're going to lay that new color over our hook, and then use our hook to pull that new color through both loops on our hook to complete our last single crochet. Now we're going to yarn over and chain up 1 and turn our work. You can cut your yellow yarn now. Make sure to leave a tail long enough to weave your ends in. And then we're ready to move on. So for row 16, we're going to work 1 single crochet into each stitch across. And at the end of the row, we're going to be changing colors again. So if you'd like to work 1 single crochet into each stitch across, and meet me back here when you have 1 stitch left to be worked, I'll meet you back here in just a moment. Alright, so we have 1 stitch left to be worked in row 16. So what we're going to do is we're going to start that stitch with our current color, drop the old color, and we're changing back to yellow. So we're going to lay the new color over our hook and then use the hook to pull that new color through both loops on our hook to complete our final single crochet stitch. Now we're going to chain up 1 and turn our work. So for row 17, it's the same like we've been doing this whole time. We're going to be doing 1 single crochet into each stitch across. We're changing colors at the end of the row, so meet me back here when you have 1 stitch left to be worked, and I'll show you how we're going to change colors moving into row 18. All right, so we are at the end of row 17 and we need to change colors before starting row 18. So this last single crochet here needs to be worked. So we're going to start it with the new or the old color, and then we're going to bring in our main color again. And again, for me, that is this almond color here. So we're going to yarn over, hook with the new color, and then pull it through those last 2 loops to finish our stitch. Now we're going to yarn over and chain up 1 and turn our work. So for row 18, we're going to work 1 single crochet into each stitch across. Now, if you haven't cut any of your yarn tails or your other yarn colors, you can cut those now. We're only going to be using the main color from now on through the rest of the main part of the jacket. So if you'd like to work 1 single crochet in each stitch across, I'll meet you back here in just a moment to show you how we're moving into row 19. All right, so I just finished the last stitch of row 18 and we're moving into row 19. To start row 19, we're going to create our last buttonhole. And to do that, we're going to need to create a chain of 6. So we're going to yarn over, hook, and pull through the loop on our hook. That's 1. Yarn over and pull through. There's 2. And we're going to continue this yarn over and pull through until we have 6 chains. All right, now that I have my 6 chains, I'm going to turn my work. And I'm ready to finish row 19. So we're going to do that by skipping these first 6 chains, and we're going to place our first single crochet in the last stitch of the previous row. All right, and that's our buttonhole created. And now we're going to just work 1 single crochet into each of the remaining stitches across. At the end of this row, you should still have 42 stitches, but we have the addition now of our chain 6 buttonhole loop at the beginning. So if you'd like to pause your video and work 1 single crochet into each stitch across, I'll meet you at the end of the row to show you how we're going to finish off this jacket, and then we'll move on to working on the sleeves. All right, so I'm back and I just finished my last stitch of row 19 and we're going to finish off our jacket here. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab our scissors and cut a yarn tail of about 4 to 6 inches. And then we're going to take our yarn and chain up 1 and then pull the yarn all the way through that chain. And so what that does is it finishes off and keeps it secure. And then all you have to do is then weave in your end and then any ends from your color work that we did in the beginning. All right. So what we'll do next is then we'll move on to attaching our sleeves. So when we are attaching our sleeves, we want the right side of our fabric to be facing us. And that's why in the beginning I said if you're not familiar with telling the right side from the wrong side, to place a stitch marker on the right side. Now, if you haven't woven in your ends, your tail from your foundation chain should be, when it's in the direction that we worked it, the foundation chain tail should be on your left side if you're right-handed and on your right side if you're left-handed. And if you're more visual or your tails are woven in, you can see that the yellow stitches look like little V's and the gray stitches look like little X's. That's what it should look like on the right side. It is the opposite on the wrong side. All right, so that the yellow looks a little bit more messy, and that's how you can tell you're on the wrong side. So we need to have the right side facing us for our adding of the sleeves, and we're going to need our yarn in our main color. To start, we're going to use a technique called a standing single crochet, also called a single crochet join. And what this does is it joins our yarn to our project with a single crochet stitch without the need of a slip stitch and a chain. So to do that, we're going to need to create a slip knot first. So using the tail end of our yarn, we're going to lay it across our palm, pin it down with our fingers, and then grab the working end of the yarn and wrap it around your fingers. Bring it to the front and cross it over itself to create an X. Flip your hand over, bringing the yarn with you, and then pin it down between your middle finger and your ring finger. I'm going to use my hook, but you can of course use your fingers for this next part. I'm just going to use my hook and place it under the first strand, over the second, and then drag the second strand under the first. And while I'm pulling with my crochet hook, I'm going to gently remove my fingers from the yarn and pull up on my crochet hook while pulling down on both ends of the yarn. Then I'm going to let go of the yarn tail and then pull on the working end of the yarn to bring that slip knot up to my hook. And I'm ready to start. Now, when you are going to attach this to your project, we want to be looking at the bottom side of the armhole. And you just want to find the middle point of the armhole. That's not a super exact science. You just want to find what looks like the best point to be the center. So for me, that looks like right here, this stitch. And so what I'm going to do with my slip knot already on my hook, I'm going to insert my hook under the remaining loop on that stitch. Okay. Then we're ready to start our single crochet join. So I'm holding the slip knot on my hook. I'm going to yarn over and pull up a loop. Okay, I'm just going to place my finger here on the tail so you can see what we've got going on. We've got 2 loops on our hook. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through both loops. And that's our single crochet join completed. So now that we have our single crochet join completed, we're going to have to create the foundation of our sleeve, and we're going to work 18 single crochets around the opening of the armhole. Now you can weave in, either weave in your ends or crochet over them. I'm going to crochet over mine here as we're working to help keep it out of the way. Now when you're working along the bottom here, you can see that there are little loops that are remaining from when we worked into these chains. When we created the armholes initially, we're going to work into those bumps. So we're going to work into each of those next 3 stitches, or the backs of the stitches, or loops, however you'd like to refer to them as. So we've got 3 stitches, and then we're going to turn our work, and we're working along the top of the piece here. So we're going to work into this stitch here, and then into each stitch across, just 1 single crochet into each of these stitches. All right, so now that I've worked into each stitch across the top, I'm going to work into the back loops here of these stitches down here. So I'm going to place 1 single crochet into that first one. One single crochet into each of the next 2. Now, if you count your stitches around, you should have 19 total stitches. And what we're going to do now is we're going to join our last stitch to our first stitch with a slip stitch. To do that, we're going to insert our hook under both loops of the first stitch we created, which is that single crochet join. Yarn over, pull up a loop, and then pull that loop through the loop on your hook to create a slip knot. Now at this point, I recommend, especially if you're not familiar with working with slip stitch joins, that you place a stitch marker into the first stitch that you created, because it can get a little messy trying to see where your first and last stitches are when you add that slip stitch join. So adding the stitch marker will help you make sure that you're not dropping or picking up any extra stitches. Okay, so for rounds 2 through 11, they're all work the same way. We're going to yarn over and chain up 1 and turn our work. And then we're just going to work 1 single crochet into each stitch around. All right, so I'm at the end and see I've got that stitch marker there. So I know that's my last stitch. I'm going to move it out of the way and single crochet into that stitch. And then I'm going to join my last stitch to my first stitch with a slip stitch join. Okay, and then again, I'm going to move my stitch marker up and place it into that first stitch of the round before moving on. Then I'll chain up one and turn my work and do that again. If you'd like to pause your video and do rows 3 through 11, working 1 single crochet into each stitch around, and then joining your ends with a slip stitch join, I'll meet you back here in just a moment to show you how we'll finish off the sleeves. Alright, so I'm back. I just finished my slip stitch join at the end of round 11 and we're ready to finish off our sleeve. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab our scissors and cut a yarn tail of about 4 to 6 inches and cut that yarn. Then we're just going to pull the yarn all the way through that slip stitch join and then give it a good little tug to tighten it up, and then you can weave in your ends. Now to do the second sleeve, you'll repeat the exact same instructions that we did for the first sleeve, so rewind the video and follow those instructions for the second sleeve. And finally, we're going to need to sew on some buttons onto our fireman's jacket. So I've taken my thread here and I've threaded it through the eye of the needle, and I'm just doubling it up and tying a knot in the end here. Now to figure out your button location, you're going to take your jacket and fold it in half. You want the right side to be facing you, and then you're going to find the location where all of your buttonholes meet the front of the jacket. One of our buttonholes is yellow, so I use that as a starting point because I know that I want the yellow to line up with the yellow on the other side. So I know that my button's going to go right about here, and I'm going to place my button in the appropriate location, and then I'm just going to grab my needle and thread and coming up through the back side of the fabric, out through the front and up through the buttonhole. Now, because I doubled up my yarn, once I go through the fabric, you'll see that there's, it kind of is like a loop because we have that knot on the end. I'm going to pull my yarn, thread, but I don't want to pull it all the way through to the knot because when I go through the other side, I'm going to go through that loop. So I'm going to go down through the other side of the buttonhole, out through the back of the fabric, and then I'm going to put my needle through the loop in the thread and give that a pull. And I'm going to pull it all the way until it's tight with the knot. And then I'm just going to keep going up and down through the button a few times until I feel that it is secured in place. I'll do this one more time. All right, so when you're done sewing on your button, what you can do is you can either tie a knot on the back, weave in your end, or traditionally to finish off a button, you would come back up through the fabric, up close to the button like this. Okay. I'm doing my best to make sure that this is visible for you, but it's a very small button, so please do bear with me. So what we'll do is we'll grab the yarn, or I want to keep calling it yarn, it's thread. We're going to grab the thread and make a loop and go around the button. And I'm going to do that a second time, make the loop kind of around the same size and go back around the button. Then you're going to kind of peel your button back and come down through the center of the loop close to where the button is sewn to the fabric and out through the back of the fabric. Now when you pull this and you pull it gently, it should pull both those loops, and this always happens, which is actually, I'm kind of glad this happened. So when you're doing this, you should have both loops pull through to the back of the fabric. I have a 50% success rate with this method. And so it's actually great that this happened because then I can show you how to fix it if it happens to you. So if you pull it and you get this little loop, what I like to do is I come back up through the fabric, back through the button. And then I'm just going to put my needle through the loop and then back down as close to as I can to where I came out of. And I'm going to use my thread to pull that through to the inside. If you cannot get it through to the inside, because I've screwed up here, what you can do is you can use your crochet hook to pull it through to the back of the fabric, or you can just cut it and try again. But usually if you just use your hook, you can pull it down back to the back of the fabric without any issues. There we go. And there it is. So then once you're done with that, you can just cut your thread or weave it in if that's what you prefer. And then you would just repeat that with all of the other buttonholes, because you do need 4 buttons total to secure your jacket. And that's it. That's how you make a firefighter's jacket for our Advent Amigurumi dolls. If you have any questions, I would love to hear from you in the comment section below. I'll be happy to help you in any way that I can. And if you enjoyed that video, please hit that like button and please consider subscribing to this channel. If you enjoy free crochet patterns, please check out my blog, theloopylamb.com, where we've got over 100 free crochet patterns, many of which have step-by-step tutorials just like this one. Thanks so much for watching, friends. Happy hooking, and I'll see you next time.